This is an introduction video to get you started with your new Particle Photon Relay controller. In this video, we're going to show you step by step how to take your controller out of the box and start controlling it from anywhere in the world. The first step is to set up the hardware. The first thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that our Particle Photon module is installed. Install it into the socket like that. This video is going to cover 1 channel, 2 channel, 4 channel, 8 channel, 16, 24, and 32 channel relay controllers. After you've inserted your Particle Photon module into your relay controller, apply a regulated 12 volt DC power supply source. After applying power, you should see a blue flashing LED on the Particle Photon module and a red power LED on the relay controller itself. Now we need to set the controller up for our Wi-Fi network and associate it with our Particle account. At this time, you need to select whether you have an iPhone or an Android device. We're going to use the Particle app on iOS to set up the Photon module for our Wi-Fi network. We're also going to use it to associate the new Photon module with our Particle account. Also during this setup, if you don't have a Particle account, we can set one up through the Particle application. So, on your iOS device, click on the App Store to open that. Now you're going to want to search for Particle Photon. That'll bring up the Particle application. Go ahead and click to open it. You can read information here, or just go ahead and download it. Once the Particle application is installed on your phone, go ahead and open it. You'll be greeted with an entry screen, and you'll click the Get Started button at the bottom. It's going to ask you to create a Particle account. Here you just enter your email, your password, and verify the password, and then sign up. If you already have an account, as I do, you can click I already have a Particle account. So we'll enter our username and password. And then you'll be greeted with a device list page. You'll see in this account I don't have any devices. So at this time, make sure that your controller is powered up and the Photon module is blinking a blue LED and is well within range of your iOS device. After that, click the plus button in the upper right corner. We're setting up a Particle Photon controller today, so click on Photon. Particle asks to send us notifications. You should go ahead and allow this. This is just going to let us know to make sure that the module is powered up and is in listening mode. If that's the case, click the Ready button. Now it's going to give us instructions to hit the Home button, go to Settings, then go to Wi-Fi, then look for a Wi-Fi network that starts with Photon Dash. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll hit the Home button. We'll go to Settings. Make sure you're in Wi-Fi. And we'll scan for networks. And we do in fact see a Photon-XVLE, so we'll select that. And then we get a notification up at the top that Particle has seen that we've associated with the Particle module. So go ahead and click on that notification. This will bring us back into the Photon app, and we'll wait for the Particle application to authenticate with the module. Now it asks us to select the Wi-Fi network we want the particle photon module to connect to. So select the network from the list, then enter the password to associate with that network. You should see the green LED flashing on your photon module. Then it should rapidly blink cyan, and then you should finally have a breathing cyan LED on the module. If the photon module needs to update its firmware at this time, it'll do so. You'll know that by a flashing magenta LED. If it flashes the magenta LED and then reboots and then flashes the magenta LED a few more times, go ahead and let it go through that process until it is fully updated. Here we can enter a name for our photon module. I'm going to name mine Relay Controller. And then just click Done. And here you should see the device listed on your device list. At this point, the module is associated with your account and is connected to your Wi-Fi network. So we're ready to move forward and flash some firmware into this controller. Okay, so on your Android device, we need to go to the App Store and we need to download and install the Particle app. So go to the Google Play Store, and then we're going to search for Particle Photon. And we should see the Particle app by Particle Industries Incorporated. Click on that, and then click the Install button. Once the Particle application is installed, go ahead and open it. You're going to want to make sure at this point that your Particle Photon Relay controller is in setup mode. This is indicated by a flashing blue LED on the Particle Photon module itself. So make sure that it's plugged in and that blue LED on the Particle module is flashing. Then click the Get Started button. If you don't have a Particle account, you can create one now by entering an email and a password. Make sure to remember these credentials because you'll need them for future steps. I already have an account, so I'll click there. Now once you're here, it'll show you a list of your devices if you have any. If you don't have any devices listed here, don't worry about it. Just click the plus button to set up your new controller. And then we'll say set up a photon. And then we'll click ready after we make sure that our blue LED is flashing on the photon module. And we'll see that it scanned and it found our new module. So we'll click to select it. So after a little bit of communication between the app and the device, you should see a list of Wi-Fi networks. These are the Wi-Fi networks that the Particle Photon module can see. So select the one that you want the Particle Photon module to connect to. Then enter the password for that network. At this time, you should see the green LED on the module flashing, and then eventually it should settle on a breathing cyan LED color. Once it's in breathing cyan, you know that it's connected to the particle cloud. And there you have it. You're all done. Your module is now associated with your particle account and is connected to your Wi-Fi network, and through that Wi-Fi network is connected to the particle cloud. Alright, so you've got a one-channel particle photon relay controller. At this point, your particle photon controller should be connected to the cloud through your local Wi-Fi network, and it should be associated with your account. If not, go back a few steps. At this point, we want to make sure that the board is powered up and that we have a breathing cyan LED on our particle photon module. Once you have that, go to build.particle.io/build. When prompted, sign in with your particle account credentials. Once you're here, click on the devices icon in the bottom left and make sure that your controller shows up and has a breathing sign indicator next to it indicating that it is online. If you have more than one device on your account, make sure the correct device is selected, indicated by a star on the left-hand side. Once your device is selected, click on the Libraries icon. We need to search the community libraries for NCD1 relay. This one right here. Now it's important to note that this library works no matter whether you have a 10 amp relay, a 1 amp relay, a DP-DT relay, a solid state relay, a high power 20-30 amp relay. It doesn't matter. All that matters is the number of relays that's on your particle photon controller. If you have one relay on your controller, this is the library for you. Make sure that the cloudcontrol.cpp tab is selected up here. Then click the button that says Use this example. That will fork it into your local code, and we're ready to flash. So, click the flash icon in the upper left-hand corner. You'll see a flashing magenta LED on your photon module indicating that the firmware is being flashed. It'll reboot, reassociate with your Wi-Fi network, and after it's associated with your Wi-Fi network, it will reassociate with the particle cloud. Once you have a breathing cyan LED on your particle photon module again, it's associated with the cloud, so we can proceed. At this point, we're ready to give the board a test run. To do that, we're going to head over to mobicle.io. At mobicle.io, you'll be asked to log in with your particle credentials. On mobicle.io, you will see a list of your devices. I only have one device called Relay Controller, so it appears right here. So if I click on that, it'll take me to the page for that controller. I'll see that it has one function called Control Relay. To that function, I can pass a few arguments. I can pass on to turn the relay on. I can pass off to turn the relay back off. Toggle to toggle the state. So if it was off, now it's on. Now that it's on, I send it again, it'll go off. And lastly, momentary. Momentary turns the relay on for 300 milliseconds and then back off again. Now if you want to use Mobicle for daily use, you can add buttons to it. Just click the plus next to the buttons, select the function you want to call, which is Control Relay. You can name the button. We'll name this one on, and we'll pass the argument on. Submit. We'll add another one for off. Another one for momentary. And then we'll add one for toggle. You can name the button whatever you want. Just make sure you have the right argument. And now we've got quick, easy buttons. That's all there is to it. Your one-channel relay controller is now up and running and ready for use. So, you've got a 2-channel particle photon relay controller. Well, let's flash some firmware into it. Don't worry about the size of the relays on the board. It doesn't matter if you have 1 amp, 5 amp, 10 amp, 20 amp, 30 amp, solid state relays, DP-DT relays. It doesn't make any difference. We're going to flash the same firmware into any of those controllers, so all these instructions apply as long as you have 2 relays on your particle photon relay controller. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that our device is powered up and it is online, indicated by the breathing cyan LED on the module. Once you have that, you're going to want to go to build.particle.io/build. From here, the first thing you want to do is click on the devices icon on the left and make sure that your controller is showing up here and is indicated by a breathing cyan LED. Once you have that, click on the Libraries tab on the left. Here, we want to search for NCD2 relay. Once we find it, we click to select it. And once it appears, we want to make sure that the cloudcontrol.cpp tab at the top is selected. Once that's selected, you want to click on Use this example on the left. And once the library is forked to your local code repository, you've got it here and you're ready to flash it into the controller. So just click the flash button on the left side here. Your LED on your photon module will flash magenta, and then it'll reboot, reassociate with your Wi-Fi network, and then reassociate with the particle cloud. Once you have a breathing cyan LED on the module again, you know that you're running the firmware and you're ready to proceed. So now let's test the relays and see how it works. To do this, we're going to go over to mobicle.io. Mobicle.io is going to ask you to log in with your particle credentials. So enter those and then click sign in. Once you're signed in, your controller should show up under the devices list. So click on it there. And after it's selected, you'll see that it has a function called ControlRelay. Click on that. Here it asks us to enter an argument. This is where we pass the command for what we want the relay controller to do. So let's say we want to turn on relay 1. Well, to do that, we just type the number 1 and then on, no spaces, and click send. You'll see that relay 1 turns on. We can do the same for relay 2. You'll see the second relay turns on. There are also commands for off. There's a command to turn off all relays, which is just turn off all relays with no spaces. There's a command to turn on all relays, which is the same thing, no spaces. Let's turn them back off. There is a toggle command for each of the relays, so you can say 1 toggle. This will turn relay 1 on now since it was previously off. You'll see if we pass the same command again, the relay will turn back off. There's a momentary command, so we can say 2 momentary. That turns relay 2 on for 300 milliseconds and then back off. That's pretty much all of the commands for this firmware. If you want to use Mobicle for daily use applications, we can make that a lot simpler by adding buttons. So we can click the plus next to buttons up here, select the function we want to call, which of course is ControlRelay, enter a name for the button. We'll say Open Garage Door. And for that, we're going to pulse relay 1 momentary. And now if we click that, we'll see relay 1 comes on and then immediately back off. So you could add as many buttons as you wanted. You could add one for relay 2 on, or maybe this would be the lights in your garage. So we'll say garage lights on. and then we'll enter 2 on as the argument. And we'll see that turns it on. Now we need 1 to turn our lights off. And there you go. So we can turn our garage lights on and off, and we can open the garage door. That's it for this. If you have any questions, let us know. Thanks, and have fun. So you've got a 4-channel particle photon relay controller. Well, this is the spot for you. It doesn't matter what kind of relays are on your board. It doesn't matter if they're 1 amp, 5 amp, 10 amp, 20 amp, 30 amp, solid state, DP-DT, SPDT. Doesn't matter. If you've got a particle photon 4-channel relay controller, we're going to explain how to flash the firmware into it, and it's the same process for all the boards. So, what you want to do is you want to make sure that your controller is powered up and that you have a breathing cyan LED on it. If you don't, go back a few steps and get that done. Once you do have that breathing cyan LED, you need to go to build.particle.io/build. And you should see something about like this. The first thing we want to do is we want to make sure that the particle cloud can detect our controller and that it's online. So to do that, click on Devices over here on the left. I have my controller here. I have a breathing cyan indicator next to it letting me know that it is online. And since it's the only particle module on my account, it's selected by default. If you have multiple controllers, make sure it is selected by clicking the star on the left that will appear here. Then click on Libraries. Under Libraries, we want to search for NCD4 Relay. That library will pop up, and then we'll click to select it. Once the library is loaded, make sure the cloudcontrol.cpp tab is selected. Once that's selected, click the Use This Example button. After that application is forked into your local code repository, we're ready to go. All we need to do is click the flash button here in the upper left corner. You'll know it's flashing by a magenta LED indicator on the photon module. Then it'll reboot, reassociate with your Wi-Fi network, and then reassociate with the particle cloud. Once you have a breathing cyan LED indicator on your particle photon module, you know that it's running our 4-channel relay control firmware. So let's test this thing out. To do that, go to mobicle.io. Mobicle.io will ask you to sign in with your particle account credentials. So enter those and then click Sign In. After you're signed in, your controller should be listed here under Devices. So go ahead and click on it. Once you're in the device interface view, you'll see it has a function called Control Relay. So we can click on that and it asks us to type in an argument. There are several commands that this firmware acknowledges. The first one that we'll try is to turn on Relay 1. To do that, we'll type in 1 on. We can do the same thing for Relay 2. Relay 3. And Relay 4. We can also send commands to turn individual relays off. We can send a command to turn off all relays, which is just turn off all relays with no spaces. We can turn them all on, which is the same, just no spaces. Turn on all relays, no spaces. Let's turn them all back off. There's also individual relay controls called toggle and momentary. So we'll enter 1 toggle. This will toggle the current state of relay 1. So it was off and now it's on. We send it again, it's on, now it's off. There's a momentary command for each relay. That will turn the relay on for 300 milliseconds and then back off. There's a set bank status command, which is set bank status colon the status you want to set it to. I sent 255, which will turn on all the relays. If I send 0, that will turn off all the relays. Each relay has a bit value in the byte that we're passing in this byte. So relay 1 has a value of 1, relay 2 has a value of 2, relay 3 has a value of 4, and relay 4 has a value of 8. So if we just want to turn on relays 1 and 8, we can take their binary values, add them together, which comes out to 9, send that, and that will turn all other relays off and 1 and 9 on. So let's flip that around and let's turn on relays 2 and 3. Their binary values are 2 and 4, so we would send a 6. You'll see relay 1 and 4 go off and 2 and 3 turn on. Simple as that. Now if you want to use the mobile application as a daily use application, we can make things a lot simpler by adding buttons. So we'll select the function we want to call, which is ControlRelay, which is the only function that this firmware has. And then we can name the button. We'll say this one is Relay 1 Toggle. So for that argument, we'll send 1 toggle. And now by clicking this button, we can toggle the status of Relay 1. Let's do a Momentary button for Relay 4. We'll call it Relay 4 Momentary. And for the argument, we'll put in 4 Momentary. And then we'll click that, and you'll see Relay 4 pulses for 300 milliseconds. We can add one to turn them all off. Argument for that is turn off all relays. We're going to add one for all on. And you pretty well get the picture. You can create buttons here that send different arguments to the control relay function. So that's about it for this. Looks like your controller is online and is working. If you have any questions, be sure and let us know. Thanks, and have fun. Alright, so you've got an 8-channel particle photon relay controller. Doesn't matter what kind of relays are on the board. It doesn't matter if they're solid state, 20, 30 amp high power, 10 amp, 1 amp, DP-DT. Doesn't make any difference. This same firmware applies to all of those boards. So, at this point you want to make sure that your particle photon relay board is powered up and has a breathing cyan LED indicator on it, letting you know that it is connected to the particle cloud. And then we're ready to flash some firmware. So to do that, go to build.particle.io/build. Once you're here, the first thing we need to do is make sure that our device is selected. To do that, click the devices icon here on the left. I only have one controller on this account, which is Relay Controller, which is the particle photon module that's installed in this 8-channel relay board. I can tell it it's online because it has a breathing cyan LED indicator next to it. Since I only have one device, it's selected for flashing firmware by default. If you have multiple particle photon boards on your account, you'll see several of them listed here, and you can select which one you want to flash firmware to by clicking a star on the left-hand side. So once you have your device selected, click the Libraries tab on the left. Under Community Libraries, we want to search for NCD8 Relay. Once it comes up, click to select it. Once it loads the code, you'll see a lot of code over here on the right-hand side. Make sure the cloudcontrol.cpp tab is selected up here at the top. Then click the Use This Example button. That will fork this application into your local code repository. At this point, we're ready to flash this firmware into the controller, so click the flash button here in the upper left corner. You'll see the LED indicator on the particle photon module flash a magenta color. Then it'll reboot, reassociate with your Wi-Fi network, and finally reassociate with the particle cloud. Once you have a breathing cyan indicator LED on your particle photon module, you know that it's reassociated with the particle cloud and it is running the NCD8 relay firmware. So at that point, we're ready to test this controller out. To do that, go to mobicle.io. Here you'll be asked to sign in with your particle credentials, so enter those and then click sign in. Once you're signed in, you'll see a list of your devices. Mine shows up here as relay_controller, so I'll click to select it. Here I'll have one function listed called control relay. This is the only particle cloud function that this firmware publishes. So we'll click on that control relay function and we'll enter an argument for it. This is where we're going to tell the relay controller what to do. So there are individual relay control commands such as 1 on, no spaces, send that, and it turns on relay 1. We send 1 off, that'll turn off relay 1. We can do the same thing for relay 2. We can do it for 3. And for as many relays as are on this board, which is 8. So let's go ahead and turn those back off. We can also toggle the status of a particular relay. Say relay 4, we want to toggle its current status. If it was on or off, now it's on. Since it's on, if I pass it again, it'll go off. There's also a momentary command you can pass to an individual relay. That command will turn the relay on for 300 milliseconds and then back off. This is something common you would use for, say, like a buzzer or a garage door opener. Those are all of the individual relay control commands. There are also relay group commands. For instance, we can turn on all relays on the board with the command turn on all relays, no spaces. Send that and we'll see that all 8 relays turn on. We can do the same thing for off. We can say turn off all relays, no spaces. Send that, they all go off. And lastly, we have a command to set the status of all relays. The command is set bank status, and then a colon at the end, and then the status you want to set them to. Each relay on the board has a binary value and a byte that we're going to pass. Relay 1 has a bit value of 1, Relay 2 has a bit value of 2, Relay 3 has a value of 4, Relay 4 is 8, Relay 5 is 16, Relay 6 is 32, Relay 7 is 64, and Relay 8 is 128. So let's say we want to turn on Relay 1 and Relay 8. We would take their binary values and add them together. Relay 1 has a binary value of 1. Relay 8 has a bit value of 128. So we would add those together and we would get 129. That will turn on those 2 relays. Now let's say we want to turn on Relay 2 and 3, but we want to turn everything else off. Well, the command for that is going to be set bank status. The bit value of Relay 2 is 2 and Relay 3 is 4, so we'll add those together and it's 6. So we'll pass that and we'll see Relay 1 and 8 go off and Relay 2 and 3 come on. There you go. Now if you want to use Mobicle for daily use applications, you can absolutely do that. To do that, click the plus button next to the buttons header. Here we can create a custom button. We'll add one to turn on all the relays. The command for that we're going to send is turn on all relays. We'll submit that. Now we can just click this button and that'll turn them all on. Let's add one to turn them all off. So now we can turn them all on and off very easily. Maybe you've got a garage door opener attached to relay 2. We'll say open garage door. Command for that is going to be to momentary. That would open our garage door. You can add as many of these buttons as you want and use any of the arguments that we covered here. So that's about it. Your 8-channel relay controller is up and running and seems to be functional. If you have any questions, be sure and let us know. Thanks and have fun. So you've got a 16-channel particle photon relay controller. Well, we need to flash some firmware into that thing. It doesn't matter what kind of relays are installed on the board. It doesn't matter if they're 1 amp, 10 amp, 20 amp, 30 amp, solid state, DP-DT, it doesn't make a difference. The same firmware will run in all 16-channel particle photon relay controllers. So at this point, you need to make sure that your controller is powered up and that you have a breathing blue or breathing cyan LED indicator on the particle photon module. This indicates that it has a valid connection to the particle cloud. So once you have that, open up your web browser and head over to build.particle.io/build. From here, the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure your device is selected. So click on Devices here on the left. Your controller should show up here and should indicate that it's online with a breathing cyan LED indicator next to it. If you have multiple devices on your particle account, you'll see them listed here, and you can select the one you want to flash firmware into by selecting a star on the left side. If you only have one controller, it's selected by default. So once your device is selected, click on the Libraries icon here on the left. Under Community Libraries, we want to search for NCD16 Relay. Once that comes up, go ahead and click to select it. And you'll see a bunch of code pop up over on the right-hand side. Make sure the cloudcontrol.cpp tab is selected, then click the Use This Example button. Once it's forked to your local code repository, you're ready to flash the code into the controller. So go ahead and click the Flash button here on the left. You can tell the firmware is being flashed into the controller whenever you see a flashing magenta LED on the particle photon module. After that, it will reboot, reconnect to your Wi-Fi network, and reassociate with the particle cloud. Once you have a breathing cyan LED indicator on the photon module once again, you know that your controller is running the 16-channel firmware and is ready to test. So to try this thing out, let's head over to mobicle.io. Mobicle.io, you'll be asked to enter your particle account credentials. So enter those and then click Sign In. Once you're signed in, the list of your devices will show up here. Select the controller you just flashed the firmware into. It's going to have a function listed here called Control Relay. Click on that. Here we can pass a command to the controller. This controller has several commands for controlling the individual relays and for controlling all the relays. So the first argument we'll try out is to turn on relay 1. To do that, we'll just type in 1 on. So to do that, we'll type in 1, comma, on. So to do that, we'll type in 1, comma, on, and click Send. You'll see relay 1 turns on. We can turn that relay back off by sending in 1, comma, off. We also have a toggle function for the relays. If you enter 1, comma, toggle and send that, if the relay was off, then it will turn on. If you send the 1, comma, toggle argument again, it's going to turn the relay off. And then finally, for individual relay control commands, we have 1, comma, momentary. This is going to turn the relay on for 300 milliseconds and then back off. Those are all of the individual relay control commands. There's also a command to turn on all relays. The argument for that is simply turn on all relays with no spaces. We send that and we can see all 16 relays on the board turn on. We can also send a command to turn off all relays. We can also just turn on the first 8 relays. We can do this by bank control. This controller has 2 banks of relays, bank 1 and bank 2. Bank 1 consists of relays 1 through 8. Bank 2 consists of relays 9 through 16. So if we wanted to turn on the first 8 relays, what we would send is turn on all relays in bank : 1. We could also do the same thing for the second group of 8 relays, relays 9 through 16 in bank 2. And then we can turn off all the relays in a bank. So we'll turn off relays 9 through 16. And then we'll turn off relays 1 through 8. We can also set the status of all relays on the controller using set relay status : and then we're going to enter a byte for the status we want to set in bank 1. Each relay in the bank has a bit value in the byte that we're going to pass here. Relay 1 has a value of 1, relay 2 has a value of 2, relay 3 is value 4, relay 4 has a value of 8, relay 5 has a value of 16, relay 6 has a value of 32, relay 7 has a value of 64, and relay 8 has a value of 128. So let's say that we want to turn on relays 1 and 8 in bank 1. Well, relay 1 has a bit value of 1, and relay 8 has a bit value of 128. So we add those two together, and we come up with 129. Then we can set the status of the relays in the second bank. And let's just say we want to turn those all on. Well, if you add all of those bit values together, you get 255. So what you're going to see is relays 1 and 8 turn on, and then and there you have it. We can also set the status of relays in a particular bank. The command for that is set bank status : the bank number, which we'll use 1, and then the status you want to set it to. Let's say we just want to turn on relays 2 and 3. Their bit values are 2 and 4, so if we add those together, we get a 6. So in this case, what's going to happen is that relays 1 and 8 are going to turn off, and then relays 2 and 3 are going to turn on in bank 1. This will not affect bank 2. And there you go. So those are pretty much all of the commands that this firmware supports. You can do just about anything that you really want to do with this firmware. Of course, if you want to make modifications, you're absolutely welcome to do so. Your controller looks like it's up and running and everything's working well with it. If you have any questions on this, be sure and let us know. So that's about it. Thanks and have fun. So you've got a 16-channel particle photon relay controller. Well, we need to flash some firmware into that thing. This doesn't matter what type of relays are installed on the board. Doesn't matter if they're 1 amp, 10 amp, 20 amp, 30 amp, DP-DT, solid state, SPDT. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a particle photon relay controller and it has 16 relays. If that's the case, then this firmware applies to your board. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that your controller is powered up and has a breathing cyan LED indicator on it. That indicates that it's connected to the particle cloud and we can flash firmware to it. So once your controller is booted up and ready to connect, head over to build.particle.io/build. From here, click the Devices icon in the bottom left corner. Here we want to make sure that your controller is online and is accessible. If it's listed here and it has a breathing cyan LED indicator next to it, then you know it's online and ready to flash firmware. If you have more than one device associated with your particle account, you'll have star indicators on the left-hand side to select the device you want to flash firmware to. Since I only have one controller, it's selected by default. So once your controller is selected, click on the Libraries icon here on the left. Here we want to search for NCD24 Relay. So search that, and once it comes up, select it. You'll see a bunch of code pop up on the right-hand side. Make sure the cloudcontrol.cpp tab is selected, then click the Use This Example button. Once the example is forked to your local code repository, we're ready to flash the firmware into the controller. To do that, just click the Flash button in the upper left-hand corner. Once you see a magenta LED flash on your particle photon module, you'll know that the firmware is being flashed into it. After the firmware is flashed, the module will reboot, reassociate with your Wi-Fi network, and then reassociate with the particle cloud. Once you have a breathing cyan indicator LED once again on your particle photon module, you know that it's running the 24-channel relay firmware and it is connected to the particle cloud. So let's test this thing out. To do that, we head over to mobicle.io. Here you're going to be asked to sign in with your particle credentials. So go ahead and do that and then click Sign In. Once you're signed in, you'll see a list of your devices. I only have one, so I just see it indicated right here. So I'll click to select it. And once I'm on that device, I can see it has one function called Control Relay. So I'll click on that, and we'll pass some arguments to that function to control the relays. The first one we'll try is to turn on Relay 1. To do that, we're going to enter 1, on. You'll see that that turns on Relay 1 on the controller. And now we can enter 1, off. Of course, instead of 1, you can enter 1 through 16 or 1 through 24 for the individual relays on your controller. In addition to on and off, we also have a Momentary command, which will turn the relay on for 300 milliseconds and then back off. Then we also have a toggle command, which will toggle the current status of the relay. Since it's off, this will turn it on. If we send that same command again, it's going to turn it back off. Now we have commands which can control all relays on the board. The first one is turn on all relays. The argument for that is simply turn on all relays with no spaces. Now we can turn all the relays off by sending turn off all relays with no spaces. Now we can set the status of all relays on the board from a single command. The command for that is set all relay status, and then we're going to pass it 3 bytes. These 3 bytes are going to set the status of the 3 groups of 8 relays on this board. Since we have 24 relays, we have that broken up into 3 groups of 8 called banks. So we'll have bank 1, bank 2, and bank 3. We can set the status of these banks using a byte. Each relay in the bank has a bit value in a byte. Relay 1 has a value of 1, Relay 2 has a value of 2, Relay 3 has a value of 4, Relay 4 has a value of 8, Relay 5 has a value of 16, Relay 6 has a value of 32, Relay 7 has a value of 64, and Relay 8 has a value of 128. So if we take the value of the relays that you want to be energized and then we add them together, we can use that to set the status of the relays. Note that if their bit value is not set in this byte and they were currently on, they will turn off. So let's use a command to turn on relay 1 and 8 in bank 1. That would be indicated by adding the bit values of 1 and 8 together. So that's going to be adding 1 and 128 together. So we'll enter 129, and that's going to set relays 1 and 8 on in bank 1. So let's say we just want to turn all relays on in bank 2. Well, if you add all those bit values together, you're going to get 255. And then for bank 3, let's turn on just relays 1 and 2. So if we add their bit values, which is 1 and 2 together, we get 3. So we'll enter all that and click send. And you'll see that's exactly what happened. Relay 1 and 8 are on, all relays in bank 2 are on, and then relays 1 and 2 are on in bank 3. We can also set the status of all relays in just one bank. The command for that is set bank status. And then we're going to pass the bank number that we want to direct that to. So we'll direct this to, let's say, bank 1. And we're going to set the status to relays 2 and 3 on. So their bit values are 2 and 4. So if we add those together, we get 6. Now you're going to see that relay 1 and 8 turn off, and then relays 2 and 3 turn on. Banks 2 and 3 will not be affected. So now we have relays 2 and 3 on. There are also bank commands to turn on and off all the relays if you want to do that. The command for that is turn on all relays in bank, the bank number. So let's turn all the relays in bank 3 on. And then, of course, there is a command to turn off all of those relays. So that's pretty much all the arguments that you can pass the controller. Now, if you want to use Mobicle for a daily use application, you can absolutely do that. To do that, I recommend adding buttons. So click the plus next to buttons, and then enter a name for the button you're creating. We'll have this button turn on all the relays. So we'll call it all relays on. And we'll make sure that the control relay function is selected up here, and we'll send turn on all relays. And then we'll click submit. Now we can click that, and it's going to turn all relays on the board on. Well, of course, if we have a button to turn them all on, we need a button to turn them all off. Argument for that is turn off all relays. And there we can turn them off. And maybe you have a garage door opener connected to, let's say, relay 9. So we'll do a momentary for that. And we'll call this one open garage door. And we'll say 9, momentary. And we'll see relay 9 turns on and then back off. So you get the gist. You can create a button to call that control relay function and then pass any argument you want. And it makes it a lot easier because you don't have to type the argument every time. So that's about it. It looks like your controller is up and running and everything's working correctly. If you have any other questions on this, be sure and let us know. But that's about it for this video. So thanks and have fun. Okay, so you've got a 32-channel particle photon relay controller. The controller I've got here is a 32-channel 10-amp relay board, but it doesn't matter what type of relays are on your board. As long as you have a particle photon relay controller with 32 relays on it, this video applies. So we've got our controller, it's powered up. You need to make sure, first of all, that the board is powered up and that you have a breathing cyan LED on your particle photon module. Once you have that, we're ready to flash some firmware into this thing. So the first thing we need to do is we need to open up the browser and head over to build.particle.io/build. Once you're there, we need to make sure that our device is online and is selected. To do that, click on the devices icon here on the left. This will list all the devices associated with your particle account. I only have one device on this account, and it shows up here as relay controller. It has a breathing cyan LED indicator next to it indicating that it is online. If you have multiple devices on your particle account, you'll need to make sure that the correct one is selected to have firmware flashed into it. Since I only have one, it's selected by default, but if you have multiple devices on your account, you'll need to make sure that it's selected by clicking the star icon to the left of it. So once your device is selected, we need to load the library to flash the firmware into it. So click on the libraries icon here on the left. Under Community Libraries, we need to search for NCD32 Relay. Once you find it, click to select it. After the library loads, you'll need to make sure that the cloudcontrol.cpp tab over here on the right is selected. After that's selected, click the Use This Example button. Once the library has been forked into your local code repository, we're ready to flash this firmware into the controller. So now just click the flash icon here on the left. You'll see the LED on your particle photon module switch to a magenta color. Then the module will reboot, reassociate with your Wi-Fi network, and finally reassociate with the particle cloud. Once you have a breathing cyan LED indicator on your particle photon once again, you know that you're running the 32-channel relay controller firmware and we're ready to proceed. So now that we're running the firmware in the controller, it's time to test this thing out. To do that, we're going to head over to mobicle.io. Once you get to mobicle.io, you will be prompted to log in with your particle account. So enter your particle account credentials and then click sign in. Once you're signed in, you'll see a list of devices associated with your particle account. Click on the one you just flashed the firmware into. Mine is Relay Controller. This firmware has one function called Control Relay, which will be listed here under Functions. Go ahead and click on that, and it asks us to enter an argument. We're going to enter an argument to tell the controller what we want it to do. There are several commands that you can pass to the controller. There are a few relay-specific commands that will control a particular relay, and then there are some group commands that will control multiple relays. So let's look at the relay-specific commands. For instance, we can turn on relay 1 by entering 1, on, and then send. You'll see that this turns on relay 1. Now we can enter 1, off. You can do the same thing for any of the 32 relays on the board. For instance, we can turn on relay 32. And we'll see the 30-second relay on the board turns on. Let's go ahead and turn that back off. In addition to the on-off commands, we also have toggle and momentary commands. So let's toggle relay 1. Toggle will change the current status of the relay to the opposite status. So the relay 1 is currently off. If we send this, it'll turn it on. If we send that same command again, it'll turn it back off. There's also a momentary command which will turn the relay on for 300 milliseconds and then back off. So that can commonly be used for something like opening a garage door, for instance. That's all of the relay-specific commands. So now let's talk about the relay grouping commands. We can turn all 32 relays on the board on or off using the command turn on all relays. And we'll see that all 32 relays turn on. Now we can turn them all off by entering turn off all relays with no spaces. We can also turn on all relays in bank. The command for that is turn on all relays in bank, and then the bank number. If we enter 1, this is going to turn on the first 8 relays. And we can do the same thing for off. Relays on the board are grouped in groups of 8. So since we have 32 relays on the board, we have 4 groups of 8. These are referred to as banks. So if we do this same thing, and then instead of a 1 we pass a 2, that's going to turn on relays 9 through 16. Then we can do the same thing for 3, which will turn on relays 17 through 24. And then we can pass 4 to turn on relays 25 through 32. Let's go ahead and turn all the relays back off using the turn off all relays command. So another bank specific command is setting the status of all relays in the bank. The command for that is set bank status. The bank you want to direct the command to will use bank 1, and then a byte indicating the status you want to switch the relays to. Since there are 8 relays in the bank, each of the 8 relays will have a bit value in this byte. Relay 1 has a bit value of 1, Relay 2 has a value of 2, Relay 3 has a value of 4, Relay 4 has a value of 8, Relay 5 has a value of 16, Relay 6 has a value of 32, Relay 7 has a value of 64, and Relay 8 has a value of 128. So let's say we want to turn on Relay 1 and 8. They have a bit value of 1 and 128. So if we add those two together, we get 129. So if we send that, it's going to turn on Relay 1 and 8. And we'll see that's exactly what happens. Now, if we were to send the command in here to turn on relays 2 and 3, which have a bit value of 2 and 4, we add those together, we get 6. If we send this, it's going to turn on relays 2 and 3, and it's going to turn off relays 1 and 8. And that's exactly what happens. There's also a command to set the status of all relays on the board, and it's very similar. The command for that is set all relay status. We're going to enter a colon, and then we're going to enter 4 bytes indicating the status we want to set the 4 banks to. So let's turn on just relay 2 and bank 1. So that's going to be a value of 2. Let's turn on all relays in bank 2, which is going to be 255. Let's say we want to leave all relays off in bank 3, so we'll pass a 0. And then let's turn on every other relay in bank 4. We'll use 85 for that. And then we'll send. And we'll see that relay 2 is on in bank 1, all relays are on in bank 2, no relays are on in bank 3, and every other relay is on in bank 4. This is all of the commands that the controller processes. With these commands, you can do just about anything you want to do. Now, if you want to use Mobicle for daily use applications, I recommend adding buttons. So click the plus button next to buttons. Make sure the control relay function is selected, and add a name for this button we're creating. We'll enter the name Open Garage Door. And let's say that we have our garage door connected to relay 1. So we'll enter 1, Momentary. Submit, and if we click that, it will pulse relay 1. And that can be used to open our garage door. Let's add another button to turn on all relays. But let's say we don't want to turn on relay 1 because we don't want to open our garage door every time we send this command. So what do? We'll use the set all relay status command. Now we know in bank 1 that we don't want to turn on relay 1. Well, the command to turn on the byte to turn on all relays in bank 1 would be 255. So if we subtract 1 from that, which is the bit value of relay 1, we get 254. Then let's turn on all relays in all other banks, so we'll enter 255, 255, 255. And we'll submit that. Now we'll click the button. And we'll see that all relays are on except for relay 1. Now, of course, if we have a button here to turn on all the relays, we're going to want another one to turn them all back off. So, for that, we'll enter turn off all relays. And then we can actually just use the turn off all relays command because we don't need to worry about turning relay 1 off. And there you have it. Of course, you can enter as many buttons here as you want, and you can use any of those commands that we went over earlier. That's about it for controlling the relays on this board. If you have any questions about this, be sure and let us know, but it looks like your controller is up and running. So that's it for this, and I hope you enjoyed it and learned something. Thanks, and have fun.